Chapter 14. In the summer of 1988, Ma travelled to the small Himalayan town of Chakrata, about 100 kilometers from Dehradun on her Ekantwas. Situated between the rivers Ton and Yamuna, Chakrata was a beautiful town nestled among conifers, rhododendrons, and birches, 7,000 feet above sea level. Jhaldialji, a senior officer in the state government, had the forest guest house reserved for the mothers. He personally came on the day of our departure and escorted Ma's car to Chakrata. The official car led the way, we followed. For the most part, the day was bright and sunny with panoramic views of the mountains. On the way, as we neared Bairat Khai, known as the Princess of the Hills for its picturesque beauty, the weather changed suddenly. There was a heavy downpour. Visibility was almost nil because of the thick fog, and cars were crawling with their headlights turned on. The challenge came when we reached a part of the road with brown, muddy slush, no parapets to mark the edges, and deep gorges on both sides. Grim murmurs of the Hanuman Chalisa could be heard from the back seat. I thanked God for a vehicle with a four-wheel drive. Slowly, we made our way up the treacherous slope, reaching Chakrata by late afternoon. The place had served as a cantonment of the British Indian Army, who occupied the town as early as 1869. The Dak Bungalow was a typical colonial structure, a beautiful house with wooden floors, arched windows, with tinted glass panes, hanging lights, and fireplaces. But time had taken its toll. The doors were creaky, the furniture seemed jittery, and the dust covered every surface. In front of the house were beautiful trees, rhododendrons and palms with clusters of hydrangeas flowing in an unkempt garden. In front of the house were beautiful trees, rhododendrons and palms with clusters of hydrangeas flowering in an unkempt garden. As in most hill houses, bedrooms were on the first floor. The day was getting on, so the five of us cleaned the room that had been set aside for the mothers. Having done this, a little Ganga water was sprinkled around. Gugul Dhoop was put in a fire that had been lit in an old cauldron. A small puja altar was set up on a table and Maharajji's blanket duly placed on it. Once this was done, both the mothers went inside to rest. Now it was our turn. As we were cleaning the place, every one of us had the sense that there was something not quite right about the house. By now it was pitch dark outside. One by one we shared our feelings, and then it was decided that instead of occupying the bedrooms in the house, we would organize our bedding in the lounge, turning it into a dormitory of sorts. Sharad, the only young man in our group, and our helper boy Hira chose to the landing to sleep on. Already there was a talk of the eerie. Who banged on the door? None of us did. Where did the matchbox go? No one took it. Odd little things were happening around us, but we did not pay too much heed to them. After taking dinner prasad and ensuring that both the mothers were comfortable, we offered our pranams to them and retired to the adjoining room to sleep. A little past midnight, we were woken up by the clear sound of footsteps that could be heard on the tinned roof of the veranda that was just outside our window. It was accompanied by the jingling sound of anklets, the kind that hill women wear. None of us dared to get up and look out. I peeped into Ma's room. Both mothers were awake. We remained huddled up in our beds. Apart from a few snatches of sleep now and then, it seemed like a very long night, broken intermittently by the footsteps and the jingling anklets. At morning tea, we shared the night's happenings with Ma. Both mothers said that they too had heard the sounds and were unable to sleep at night. Ma said, "यहाँ किसी की अधगति हुई है, किसी की आत्मा मुक्त होने के लिए भटक रही है. Someone has died an unnatural death and the soul is seeking liberation." When we were done with our morning routine and prayers, Ma called the watchman and asked him to bring a few elderly men living nearby. After many denials, they came out with the story that way back when the British garrison was stationed here, a local woman committed suicide by jumping from the roof due to the oppressive behavior of an officer. They ultimately confessed that they too see an apparition of a woman and hear similar sounds. They said this has been happening for many years, and though her spirit haunts the house, we need not be afraid as she was a harmless soul. None of us dared to speak, but in our hearts we all wished that Ma would ask us to simply pack up and leave. Ma said no such thing. We returned to the house, and Ma asked us to place our puja books, especially the Ramayana and the Srimad Bhagavat, on each windowsill. Hira Singh prepared a coal fire and put handfuls of Gugul Dhoop into it, almost filling the entire house with smoke. Then commenced a marathon of prayers. Ma said we should begin Akhand Path or continuous recitation of the Ramayana for 3 days. We all took turns. Both mothers would also read in the mornings. This went on day and night. The nocturnal sounds faded away, and the air felt as though was washed and cleaned. We were able to settle into that house, and everything returned to normal. Soon it was July. After a few days, the monsoon broke. There was torrential rain in those parts, which continued unabated for more than a week. All of a sudden, one evening, Ma said she would like to leave for Kechi the very next morning. Our only window to the world outside was a small tea shop near the guest house with some basic supplies. The man at the shop informed us that a large part of the road near Kalsi had been completely washed away and it would be impossible for us to move out. The local people who had been trying to walk across had slipped on the hillside and a few had even lost their lives. We went back to Ma and apprised her of the situation, suggested that we should stay on for a few more days. I tried my best, but Ma remained adamant and insisted we leave the next day. In that incessant rain, Sharad and Hira loaded the baggage and we left around 10 in the morning, late by Ma's standards. As we drove past the grocer's shop, he signaled at us frantically, telling us not to go. There was no sign of life on the road, just rain and gushing waterfalls, and the car had to almost wade through water. Not far from Kalsi, we arrived at the point where the road had been damaged. A few army jeeps and trucks had been lined up, and many men in their service uniforms and rain gear could be seen. We were told to park our car on one side. One of the personnel walked up to us and informed us that the soldiers had been deployed to cut into the hillside and provide a track for the general's car as he needed to get to Dehradun urgently. He advised me to line up behind the army's vehicles as the track would be closed soon after the general passed by. We waited, and when the general's convoy moved, we followed the army trucks. Ours was the only civilian car to pass through, as the improvised road was closed soon after. I remember the tremendous sense of relief after crossing over. Haridwar was still some distance away, and we would have to stop here for the night. It was a difficult situation as it would be dark by the time we reached there. None of us knew of an ashram or dharamshala appropriate for the mothers to stay. Hotels were unthinkable. I expressed my concern to Ma. A while later, a policeman on a motorcycle followed by a pilot car stopped all the traffic on the road. I too parked the jeep on one side. We were told to clear the road as the chief minister was passing by. Soon, a fleet of cars went past us. One of the cars at the back suddenly stopped and I heard a loud Jaya Ma! I saw Mr. Jaldial almost jump out from his seat. He was on an official duty and delighted to see Ma. After he had offered his salutations, I did not waste time and asked him to suggest an appropriate place for Ma to stay in Haridwar. Mr. Jhaldial said he had booked an apartment in the newly constructed Jairam Ashram overlooking the Ganga for the chief minister, but his program had been cancelled at the last minute and he was proceeding directly to Dehradun. The accommodation was lying vacant. Jhaldial ji himself led Ma's car to Haridwar. The rooms were simple and spotless, and since cleanliness was the prime requisite for mothers, it suited our requirements perfectly. And so we ended up spending 4 very pleasant days in Haridwar. In the mornings, we took Ganga Shnan, while in the evenings, we would sit in a balcony facing Ganga ji and do our prayers. One evening, the two ladies accompanying Ma were busy in the kitchen, and Sharad had gone to the market for supplies. That left me alone with the mothers, and I somehow felt self conscious singing the Prarthana all by myself. I started with the prayers. After a few minutes, a beautiful male voice accompanied my singing. Taking for granted that Sharad was back, I felt easy and continued without looking back. After the prayers, as I offered pranam to her, Ma asked, "Who was singing with you?" I confessed that since I am not a singer, I was happy that Sharad had joined us. Ma said, "Where is Sharad? Call him." I couldn't find him and so went to the kitchen. The ladies there said he was not back from the market yet. I came back and told Ma that Sharad was not there, but I heard someone sing along with me. Ma told me to go and check all the 4 rooms on our floor. There was no one in the 3 rooms, but in the fourth one, which was Ma's room, there was an exceptionally oversized monkey comfortably sitting on the windowsill. When I told Ma of this, she asked for a mango and told me to offer it as prasad to monkey and offer him salutations from afar.